all wheels of this kind of depth are more or less the same. 3, 2, 1. So hi everyone, we're back with CRW wheels. Are we here to do another free engineering audit, or can we just bolt them on and ride them on a bicycle? Let's find out. So this video is going to be about the CRW 5060 wheels that Joe from Panda Podium has sent me via CRW. So CRW are a small wheel brand in Xiamen and China, sold through Joe's website. Full disclosure, these were sent for free to evaluate. I've still got the old ones, and the old ones I think were pretty crap. I've still used them. I've used them through the winter now. So let's just have a quick legacy update on those before we look at the new ones, which aren't new because they're actually launched at the same time as this profile. But anyway, the original set that I had the 21mm internal with 50-55. On paper, very, very light, very, very deep for the weight. Ridiculous specs, but I wasn't very impressed. I gave them a bit of a telling off. I don't want to obviously destroy any relationship with Joe. I think he's doing a great job. I think he's doing an absolutely game-changing job in this Panda Podium approach. But if you're going to send them to Peak Talk, you're going to get found out. Of course, I could tell you this wheel set is great by unboxing it, claiming I've ridden it for a couple of months, and it's actually quite rewarding to get a good product, put it through its paces for a good couple of months, treat it really hard, which you can do when you don't buy it. You can absolutely thrash it. Helps create sales for the company. I could do the same with this. I could tell you it's great. It's a high price, it's a high ticket item, but this is where I'm trying to differentiate my channel from the others. If there's a problem with something, I will tell you, and I'm not going to give any affiliate codes or any links or whatever until I believe this is sorted out. And be wary of other YouTubers who seem to just basically do a review off the back of an unboxing, which is something completely different. But we need to fix this, and yeah, I didn't really agree with the stub axle layout of the front hub. Legacy update on this rear hub and the bearings. I'll just put it up to the microphone. So some wet rides have killed those quasi-ceramic bearings and now will be replaced with steel bearings. This clunking issue with the front hub, where the stub axles, which is different to a normal front hub layout, are actually clunking in the inner races of the bearings, because when I'm heavy, what do you mean when I'm heavy? When I get up out the saddle, it's quite a lot of load over the front wheel, and it was overcoming the friction between the little shoulder on the end cap and the inner race, the side of the inner race. Essentially, they're using this as the hub axle, and the hub axle would normally be quite a tight press fit inside the inner race of the bearing. This is too loose. This diameter that is forming the axle, what I call the stub axle, is very, very loose in the inner race of the bearing. Normally, you'd hope the load path, when this is all sandwiched in the bike frame by the through axle, which is providing a large clamping load, actually the load path should be from this tiny shoulder on the kind of inside here of the end cap, and then onto the side of the inner race, through the inner race, and then to the tube spacer in the center of the two bearings, and that should hold the load path. That's fine, and it does, until you get out the saddle and you start leaning over the front wheel, and then the friction between that tiny shoulder on the end cap and the edge of the inner race is overcome. And then what starts to happen, I was feeling this weird stick slip phenomenon, and I was getting like a ticking that was vibrating up through the fork and even through the frame. Then it was starting to clunk around in the ID of the inner race of the bearing. So CRW, you know, they said they weren't aware of that, which was pretty shocking, because if I could tap those wheels on the bench, the end caps could just fall out. They were just too loose. Anyway, they replaced the end caps. They agreed that they were too loose, worked on the tolerances, and they sent me the new end caps. And I did actually update that original CRW wheel video to say that they were fine, they were fixed, no more noises from the front wheel, everything was hunky-dory. But I was really disappointed. I was pretty pissed off because they were charging a lot of money for them. And I told Joe, I was like, you can't charge this for something that you say doesn't happen, but you know, you don't have many 90-kilo riders out there testing them. You need to test above your comfortable use case. This is called a safety factor, right? So anyway, gave him a bit of a hard time, but I was still a fan of the ambitious nature of the wheels, the surface finish, the weight, the stiffness was all very good. The aerodynamics were very good. That was tested on the old sensor with the Aerolab. Now I'm using a Ghibli, but we'll get into that. Anyway, let's park that to the side. Like I said, can we, you know, just ride these and not worry about them now? This is a much more polished product. Technically, this profile, this rim profile, was available when I got these ones, but I can tell they've worked on things. The small details since I've had these wheels. So first of all, the sealing I think is a lot better. I haven't ridden these in such like hellish conditions as those ones yet, but the bearings still feel dead smooth. They've put some actual weatherproof grease under the end caps, which I like, which is such a small feature, which more companies just should do. It just gives that little bit of extra barrier for the water before it gets in through the bearing seals. Some say it attracts grit. Hambini, I disagree with him on that. We always argue about this, because if you've got a very, very tight running labyrinth seal, the grit can't get through the labyrinth seal in the first place. If you've got a bearing with no labyrinth seal, then I would agree, don't put grease on bearing seals. But with the labyrinth seals, I think it's good because water can get in, but grit can't. Anyway, this has got a double labyrinth seal on the end cap, really nice to see. The end caps are really tight fitting now, so I actually needed the wooden kind of jaws on the Black & Decker workmate to pull these end caps off. Can't pull them by hand, I'll just show you. Even when I wiggle it. This is a much fatter rim. This is a 25mm internal, and the rear on this one is a 60mm deep with a 21mm internal. So let me just restate that, 25 on the front and 21 on the rear. Now, I think it was something that Roval or S-Works started, but I don't really understand why. More often than not, you want a slightly narrower front tyre, and my preference is to have a fatter rear tyre for the comfort, because you're not really penalised so much on the rear in terms of aerodynamics, because everything's kind of swirling and tossed up by the time it gets to the rear wheel. As long as you've got a fairly deep rim, the tyre doesn't matter so much on the back. That's going to put my neck out, and I'd rather customise that tyre for puncture protection, rolling resistance, and comfort. And you can do that with a wider tyre. You can either run it hard on a smooth road, or you can drop it down, have it really comfortable, and have better traction on a rough road. But the 32, which I normally ride on the back of my bikes, all my bikes, is light bulbing on that because it's 21mm internal. Whereas on this one, I'm on a 28 now, because a 30 on here is just way too wide. The 28 on the front of this is absolutely perfect. I would say this is the best, one of the best rim to tyre transitions I've seen on any wheel, but I'd normally run a 30 on the front. Anyway, I think there's a company out there, it might be Swiss side or it might be another kind of small boutique manufacturer that is actually doing it the other way around with a slightly wider rim on the back, and that's what I would go for, but no one else seems to do that. That would give the tyre a wider footprint, a more comfortable footprint, and allow you to get the benefits of a wider tyre on the rear more, where you're not penalised for aerodynamics. Anyway, my ideal at the moment, if it wasn't for these wheels, would be the 23-23. So I've got a couple of the wheel sets. One of them is the Polaris 42mm that I rode for the Fred Whitten, probably one of the most reliable wheel sets I've ever tested. It's been on my bike all winter, and I just kept it on there for the Fred Whitten because I knew it, it's reliable. That's 23mm internal. 23-23, you can't go wrong with that. 25-21, it's just a little bit odd. Anyway, so engineering wise, apart from those weird rim profiles, I think it's a much better rounded product. Another issue I had with these ones is that I couldn't fit Shimano lock rings onto the centre locks. Before it bottomed out on the disc, the threads were just getting way too stiff, and it was like binding up and actually cutting the threads. So CRW did some investigation into that after I sent them all that data, and I tried many different lock rings, like steel ones, which are the heavier, cheaper Shimano ones, and the aluminium ones, which are slightly lighter. And they found the same thing after doing some investigation. So they actually found differences in the thread pitch of different lock rings. So what they've done, they made their own, which is really cool. And these thread in really easily, no binding up, same tool, same interface, and it's just nice to have another set of lock rings, and finish on those is really nice. Now, the stiffness test. I'll put up the chart here like I always do. Being carbon spoked with quite a thick carbon spoke, you expect them to be very stiff. However, they're not that stiff, particularly on the front wheel. Normally the front wheel is quite a lot stiffer than the rear wheel because of the spoke angle being wider. And that's pretty much a trend I've seen through all of my stiffness tests, and you can see how many wheels are tested on the chart now. But these aren't so stiff on the front, and I'm not massively against that. I think wheels can be too stiff. I think some of the Windspace wheels are, if your road's a bit imperfect, I think they're a bit too stiff, and you have to drop the tyre pressure down to a level where you may be penalising yourself on rolling resistance now just because you're trying to make it a comfier system. These aren't so stiff, and I think the front wheel stiffness is let down because of that front axle and bearing assembly. I don't think it's the stiffest assembly. So if you've got something like a DT240 with a dedicated axle, you've got a press fit on the outer race of the bearing where it presses into the hub, and you've got a press fit on the inner race with their axle that's always in situ. I'm not talking about the through axle, I'm talking about the hub axle. With this, you've got these kind of push-in end caps. You can overcome that clamping load on the end caps and get the wheel to clunk. And I think in this, although you can't hear it now, it's still happening on a very small level, and that's getting a little bit more displacement. When I do the test, I don't preload the wheel because I think it's important to test it in a zero preloaded state, which simulates the wheel going side to side when you're out the saddle sprinting. You will go through a period where it's basically going through zero load, so it's going negative to zero to positive and cycling in between. That's why I don't preload the wheels. If I preloaded the wheels with a weight and then added more weight and then tested the deflection, I take out that slight slop in the middle, which is essentially leading to a lack of stiffness. So that's why I don't preload the wheels when I do the testing anyway. It's a little bit geeky. The rear wheel seems to be a lot stiffer, and I've never had problems with the stiffness of the rear wheels on these. But anyway, for a deep rim with thick carbon spokes, not the stiffest, but I actually think that's a good thing, especially for the UK roads that I ride it on. What more can I say? For the price point, I think 1,700 near enough US dollars for these. The rim tape had some bubbles in it, not great. You know, you get cheaper wheels from Ican, Yoleo, rim taped absolutely perfectly. Like, you can't even tell it's been done. It looks seamless. Elite, probably one of the best for rim tape as well. These a little bit shoddy with the rim tape. Very, very manual process. They've sent me spoke tensions of the front and rear wheels. Again, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't really care. I just want the wheels to be straight. Rear wheel absolutely fine. Front wheel, put the dial gauge on it here. You can see out the box with the tyre on and inflated. And I don't care if it's true when there's no tyre on it. I need to ride it with the tyre on. Not the truest. There's a bit of run out now. This dial gauge, the one I had lying around, is in inches, so I'll convert it to millimetres here. That is a little bit beyond, I would say, the Xiamen standard. So talking to some other ladies from Xiamen, I do think these are slightly out. I'm being picky here, and it could just be a slight deviation in the rim. Actual trueness from surface finish, it's mirror finish, and that is one good thing about that, is it is mirror finish. Now, just for all the conspiracy theorists out there, again, I will just remind you, these were sent for free from Panda Podium. I didn't pay for any of this. I'm doing this video for free. However, I think my channel is very neutral when it comes to things like this. Like, there are many tubers that will just promote everything. Like, you know, with these got roasted. I did not promote them until they were fixed. I don't really care if you buy these things or not, and I'll only give a code or a link out if I believe it's a good product. There are many things I've reviewed on the channel which I refuse to give any kind of affiliation to. I don't receive any commission, but I'll still put the video out because I want people to show the good and the bad. I want people to see the good and the bad, and I want to highlight the bad so the companies come back and try and improve. And I think that's what's happened with CRW. I think that's what's happened with Elite. I think that's what's happened with Cyc Plus and their trainers. They come asking, you know, can you do us a free video? We'll give you affiliate commission. Yeah, but if it's bad, I'm not going to give the link. I'm not going to take a discount code, and I'm going to still put the video out. And they don't like it at the time, but they then say, actually, if we can impress this guy and we can do well, then it's going to sell. So that is the rough model of the channel, and that's why I can still remain fairly neutral, I think. They are slightly over the weight. They are 1,300 grams. I think they've claimed 1,290, which is insane for a wheel this deep. For that weight is incredible. No issues with the front hub, no issues with the rear hub. I just wish the rear was slightly wider, and maybe just I wish both were 23. Aerodynamics. So I've done limited testing on the new sensor so far, so I'm now using the Ghibli sensor. It's much easier to use, it's much more user-friendly than the old Aerolab one, and my kind of library, my catalogue of wheels tested isn't so big as the old database. So on the day I tested these against the 6-spoke Elite, the 6-spokers, the Velo 6 from Elite, which I thought were going to be mega fast. And I tested the new wheels from Ascent. That takes up best part of sort of 3-4 hours doing all those testings, so only 3 wheels on test, and these were the fastest. However, as you can also see in this data, just to put this into context, when I changed the helmet from my casque to my Road TT helmet, which is the HJC, that's a much bigger difference than any of these wheels had between them. So with the wheels, if the CRR is matched, the coefficient of rolling resistance is matched with the tyres and the skin stress in the tyres, all wheels of this kind of depth are more or less the same. So there is very little value in doing lots of aerodynamic testing. Therefore I've said it, like on wheels, they're so similar. Even the 6-spoke wheels were fast, but no faster than these, I think were quite impressive. I was expecting the 6-spoke, which is essentially a track wheel, to be faster than this, but no, these were the fastest. So these are my go-to road TT wheels on the disc brake bike. As you've probably been seeing, I've been riding these a lot. However, I've just received some funky new handlebars for the rim brake bike. Well, they're on the rim brake bikes, it was easier to set up. So that's what I'm riding now in the road TTs, which actually have some Fastsport 50mm wheels on that I built in 2016, so 8 years ago, still going strong, built them myself, and they've got 28 spokes on the rear and a Dura Ace hub. Anyway, I digress. Would I have ridden them in the Fred Whitten? I could have used these in the Fred Whitten, but I chose not to. I chose not to because I just wanted reliability. I've been working up towards that for months of training. I didn't want a new wheel set, something I hadn't tested so much to give me any issues. That's what happened with these when I took them to the Alps. So I didn't, but having ridden them now for 3 months almost, I'm pretty confident these are a much more ready, finished product than they originally once were. And there we go. Aerodynamics. Let me just briefly explain. So I've got on here the CDAs, which probably won't mean much to you because that's my CDA. It's general all-day riding on the hoods at 35 k's an hour. The protocol and more in-depth analysis of the aerodynamic stuff is all on Patreon because I won't bore you with it here. But it's an out and back protocol, same position, same kit, same bottle, same helmet, like same everything has to be kept the same. I tested this versus other wheels on the same day. The test is 35 k's an hour. The data at 35 k's an hour here, like the wattage differences at 35 k's an hour that I'm putting in here, is not extrapolated because I test at 35 k's an hour. Anything like 40 or 45 k an hour will be extrapolated. So test speed 35 k an hour, very, very similar to other wheels, but on paper, yes, they are the fastest. And yeah, more improvement in changing the helmet. So I'll leave a link to these in the description below. I hope you enjoyed that, quite in-depth chat, and I'll see you in the next one.